some of the settings that I have from my GitHub branches to protect my main branch. And everybody's going to have a different idea about how to do this and what you should do. But the end result is you want it so that, at least for me, even for myself, I want it so that I get a message like this. I want a message that rejects my attempt to commit to main, which is always a bad idea. It does not take that much extra time to create a separate branch in a PR and to merge that PR and to create a bunch of stuff. And so, um, I have been pushing to main a lot on SkillStack. It's just a documentation site. But even in a documentation site, I really don't like it because the PRs and the branches give you quite a nice history over time to show what has happened. Something that I noticed right off the bat, and let's get into it. Let's show you. So you open up your branches. This is the SkillStack website, the branches, and I went to the settings on it right here, and I clicked on branches, and there was no branch protection rule, so I clicked on Add Rule, and I went ahead and added it here. It took me a little while to figure out that branch name pattern is main. There's so many of you who are probably like real DevOps pros at this stuff. I don't do it all the time, so I had to kind of remind myself. That's why I'm making the video. And there are a bunch of considerations to go over. So again, I'm relatively new to this, so I'm just documenting what I have so far. If somebody sees something, a mistake I've made, please put it in the comments and we'll talk about it. Require a pull request before merging. So this is the main thing that I want. I want it to force a pull request so that the pull request can then be merged into it. I noticed that when doing open source development and you're using more of a fork the repo and then create a PR of the forked repo and have it applied to the main repo, it's a totally different workflow from having a bunch of collaborators or individual people on the same repo who all have access to the repo, being kind of forced to do the right thing. So, and what does that mean, right? The right thing in this case is to make a PR. Why do you want that? You want the PR because that's the place where all the commits are going to be placed, and then ultimately there's going to be reviews, there can be comments about that, there can be threaded discussions about specific line numbers. These are all things that are incredibly difficult to do without GitHub. So let's go back to it. Require approvals. I turn mine off because this particular repo is one that I tend to manage myself. It's not really managed by anybody besides me. But generally speaking, I would always have require approvals on. And the default is 1. We have that set at work. And even on our documentation repos that often include notes from the most recent meeting, minutes from the meeting, we do keep that on, and that way we've always got somebody checking it, making sure the markdown is relevant, maybe questioning the spelling or something. You get at least one other set of eyes on it, even if it's a small change. And that is an overhead cost to deployment of your documentation or your project that I think is always going to be worth it. I used to not believe that. I used to think, oh, hey, I just want to put something out there. But I cannot tell you how many times somebody's caught like a stupid little thing just because they had one other set of eyes on it. So generally speaking, require approvals is on, but I'm turning it off in this case because it's literally just me. Dismiss stale pull request approvals with new commits are pushed. We don't have approvals on, but this would mean that if I were to push, this is something that you can do with a PR, right? You can request for approvals and then you can push. I wish I could show you that right now. You can continue to make working commits, particularly to a draft PR. So I highly recommend that when you first make a PR, you start every project with an issue and a PR based on that issue. And I'm not necessarily going to show how to create that from the GitHub command line. It's pretty easy. But there'll be other video on that. But then once you get that set up, then you can immediately start pushing to your development, to your development PR, and you have no fear of breaking anything. So people can monitor your development as you're doing it, and they see that the PR is a draft PR. So this is actually a really useful tool. In fact, for documentation, I am setting up multiple PRs for the different main organizations of SkillStack. So if you go to skillstack.io, and you click on the beginner boost here. So my new goal with this is to not put any content on skillstack.io that is not ready for final consumption, right? Even if I don't have things here yet, I'm not going to be putting. And this is something of a change in how I have been doing stuff, because once it hits the web, people think it's real. They think it's final, and they will judge you based on that. Even if it's a Zettelkasten and you put a line in all bold that says this is a Zettelkasten, this is my live thoughts, I change them all the time, they will still hold you accountable for that. So how do PRs affect this, and how does the branch protection affect it? Well, by thinking in terms of PRs, you can group all of the work that you want to do under an issue and under a PR. And in this particular case, I can have a PR for creating the job and creating the web content and creating the Linux content. And I can have an ongoing PR that is just that content. And I can actually make modifications as long as there's not an overlap in where the files are being changed. I can actually create all the content on that PR. Really cool thing with MakeDocs is you can actually preview the PRs using GitHub Pages, which is really, really cool, because then, whatever the latest PR was, you can go out there and see what it would look like. And if you have actions that are rendering your MakeDocs in this particular case, you can go preview all that. And I don't know if I'm necessarily going to do that. I tend to use live previewing. That would only be useful if you had multiple users that you wanted to let preview and then say yes, okay, that looks good, and then go in and commit it. But the point is that I can have a PR and accompanying branch for Linux, web, job, bash. Hey Sam, C, Go, and containers. And then when I make a video about that topic, I can go kind of in a rough, messy way, throw it in there and commit it so I don't forget it. But it's not been committed to the main site, so it's not going to confuse anybody by them going out there. But yet the thought and the code will be captured, so that I can work on multiple things at the same time, even if it's just me. This is obviously very valuable if you're working on a team. But it's a great way to organize multiple, work buckets, I suppose, for yourself, for what you're going to be doing. And so back to the settings for locking it down. So even if it's my own thing, I have dismiss stale approvals, require approval for the most recent reviewable push. This just means that if I've done any commits since the last approval request, it'll negate the review that somebody may have done, and it'll say new review required if you make any change, which is something you obviously want. Okay, so let's see. Whether the most recent reviewable push must be approved by someone other than the person who approved it. Required from the most recent reviewable push, yeah. So you always want the person who did the review to come back and re-review it so they can see the changes. And a lot of times that's the development process. They'll be out there. They'll see your PR. They'll add a line, comment on a particular line number during the review, and they say, "What's up with this?" And that gets us to the next point: resolving conversations, which is like if you start a conversation, you can have to click on resolve all the conversations so that everybody's in agreement before you are even able to merge a PR. Require status checks to pass before merging. Now, I had to turn this on. I'm not familiar exactly with what a status check is, but I'm pretty sure that means, that is it, did the reviews pass, yes or no? I'm pretty sure this also requires any actions to complete successfully based on the push. So any push actions need to complete successfully. I know that because I have actually done that and had the action fail, and it does not allow me to merge. So I think that's there, but I'll come back to that one later. The conversations are not. I guess we'll turn that on, even though there's not really any other people. I from my own stuff here, if some random person starts up a conversation on my thing, that might end up blocking my own development. Because some random person, because this is public, they could come in and create a conversation on something, and then because it's not resolved, that would block me from merging something, even if I didn't agree with the random person who made a comment. I don't know that public repos may allow random comments on merges. I do know that they do allow random people to review. No, that's not true. We had to add everyone as a collaborator. So this is probably okay to turn on. We'll turn it on anyway, because I don't even think people can participate in the review process unless they're added as a collaborator. So that would be keep me from being griefed by public people. Required sign commits. I do sign commits for everything already, so that should be okay. Linear history prevent merge commits from being pushed to matching branches. Not necessary in this particular case. Required deployments to succeed before merging. The reason I don't, this one might not be a thing. I don't know if this is going to disable my ability to do multiple PRs at the same time and have them committed out of linear, history cycle. Required deployments to succeed before merging. Choose which environments. I don't know. I don't have any deployments. This might be related to issues. I don't know. Lock branch. I actually turned this one on accident once, and that prevented anybody from making changes. Users cannot push to the bench. I'm not quite ready. Do not allow bypassing the above settings. So I had to turn this on because let me show you what happened. When I didn't have that on, I was very surprised that I set up everything else. And I went ahead and I changed the readme.md file, and I was able to make changes. And it said, your changes must be made through a pull request. And then it said here, bypassed rule violations. And that happened automatically. I'm like, how did it do that? And the only thing that I could figure about that is because I am an administrator who probably by default has bypass branch permissions turned on. And I didn't want to have to go change that setting for myself for every repo I've ever created. So my attempt to fix this was to click this on, and that seems to have blocked it. And after I did that, I then got this, which says, nope, sorry, declined. And that's exactly what we want. I don't want to ever be allowed to push to main, period. And that is going to change that. So, I don't claim to be an expert on any of this stuff. I'm just sharing what I've been doing and where I am. If you are an expert, welcome your comments and suggestions. Again, I think being an expert in this particular topic would qualify me as a DevOps engineer. Use of Git in this way and GitOps and all this kind of thing. Those are skills that fall very solidly in DevOps, whereas I'm primarily an infrastructure engineer who does coding and uses Git and uses, GitOps and all of that. So it's not my primary job responsibility. It's kind of ancillary, but it's still very important. And so I thought I'd go ahead and document the stuff that I have here for myself so I can go back and look at it, and for anybody else who might be looking at it. If you want justification as to why you should lock down your development process and not allow anything to go into main that is not from a merge, that's a separate conversation, and we could have that debate another day. So that's the end of that video.